format of the Big 12 tournament?
We as a coaching group at our Big 12 meetings this fall proposed a 12-team pod format, basically trying to protect RPI. The double elimination format was not a super awesome RPI protector, so we kind of stole the idea from the ACC of having four pods. The winner of each, each team plays two games, and we thought that was the best model. I think in a cost saving slash new world of college athletics, it went to single elimination, and so same thing for the SEC, same thing for the ACC. The Big Ten's doing a pod deal, um, but I because our RPI is good and we're in the spot that we're in, I think it's a good format for us because we don't have to overtax anyone for a regional. I do think the pod format is the better tournament, and hopefully it's something we can work for in the future. It's a great format. It's time tested, and if you look at RPI in trying to protect 5 through 8 in the standings, those are usually the teams on the bubble. The pod format's really good, but for this year, we're at on a personal level, I think this is a great format because we're able to line things up for regional.
Do you think with your great record, you could host a regional? Do you have to do anything special at the Big 12 tournament?
Um, yeah, I think I think we're in a great spot. I think the Big 12 is certainly a conference worthy of having multiple hosts. And I think we have to be in that discussion, given the fact of a really solid regular season. I do think that there are a bunch of teams that can make that same case, though, and so I think it's probably would help us. I think we're in the conversation now. I think it would certainly help us to do well here, but I do think we're a part of that conversation.
To do what you did at West Virginia, doesn't that suggest you're a top 10 team? And I don't know what the rankings are this week, but are you, I mean, I know you're confident in your team, but are you amazed at what you did? And what do you think about the rankings?
I haven't looked at the rankings today, to be really honest. I don't spend a whole lot of time looking at those. I was proud of what we did there. I wasn't surprised at I really wasn't surprised with how our guys compete. That I didn't think that was going to be. I I thought anything was possible with how much our guys love playing together and how they compete. So I never looked at the weekend as what are we going to do over 3 games. I really looked at it as all of my energy went into Thursday, and then the second Thursday's game was done, all my energy went into Friday, and then the same thing for Saturday. So it is looking back, that's a really good West Virginia team that we beat, and to sweep them at their place, that doesn't happen a whole lot. So yeah, very proud moment for our program for sure.
Fitz, you guys have been so consistent, and that's obviously what you pride yourselves and your program on. Anything change at all mindset wise when it flips to postseason? Do you have to talk about that or no?
I think you talk about certain things related to postseason, and just what does I did practice today. I talked about, we put ourselves in such a great spot that, we could spend a bunch of time talking about if this happens and that happens, maybe we can host and we can do this and we can do that. I said, or we can just stick to what we've done the entire year, and that is focus on the day in front of us. And I said that's probably the right path for our program. And so I don't think anything changes with this group in particular. They're old. There's some maturity. They love each other. They're really funny. Their energy is awesome. So I think it's more of a just make sure we've got things buttoned up and organized so they know where they need to be when they need to be there, and then be right before the game, make sure they're in the gates the right way, and then when those gates pop open, just let them run. I mean, they love playing baseball and they are having so much fun, and I think sometimes your best coaching can be when you just get out of the way, and I think hopefully we're at that spot.
With the Big 12 tournament being single elimination, how much do you think it prepares you for like elimination games in a regional?
I think it absolutely does, Sam. I think you gotta, uh, I feel like we've played must-win games for a really long time. Like we were talking about today as a staff. We had game two at Utah. I think we were up 12-2 or something, and up 7-0 at West Virginia. Like those have been a couple that we've been able to stretch out, but we've played so many games where it's just you feel like every pitch matters. And so I think the fact that it's one and done at the Big 12 tournament does throw in an added level of intensity of it's win or go home the whole time. So I think that's a keen observation that probably is prepping us for it.
How helpful is it, just from a pitching perspective and a routine perspective, that you were able to secure that first round bye, and in the best case scenario, can treat it like a 3-game series?
Oh, I thought it was huge. I thought it was huge because we were Thursday, Friday, Saturday against BYU, which was perfect because it's set up for Thursday, Friday, Saturday against West Virginia, and then the bye sets us up Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So the trick has been bumping Cooper up along the way. Cooper was thrown on Sundays, then we had to get him to Saturdays and then get him to a Friday. So I think it was big. I think more than anything, it was really big because at some point you just need to rest. I mean, we've been running guys ragged, and we were able to buy some innings last weekend and get Barth and Ian off the field, and Diggy and Mike did an unbelievable job of jumping in there. So I feel like those guys are now rested and ready to jump right back in full go. But now this is, today we practiced and lifted. Tomorrow we'll practice and lift. Wednesday, massive, day to not have to play and let whoever we're going to play actually have to go out there and compete. So I thought it was huge to get the bye.
After the game on Saturday, you mentioned to Brian a specific plan you set out with when you got hired. I'm wondering if you could share any details about that plan or why you mentioned it specifically after that West Virginia series win.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it to Brian because I think sometimes we look at seasons and really treat them like they're in a vacuum, and really this is a season that's in a much bigger vacuum of 3 years in the making, and there were things that happened. We as a staff we talk about it all the time. The first time we were all together on campus, we were in our office until I left. I left at like 2 a.m. I don't know how long those guys stayed, but and we really mapped out, hey, this is how we're going to recruit, and these are the foundational principles of what we're going to do. And there are all kinds of times along the path that you can take a wrong turn and start doing it differently or skip some steps, or like we do a lot of background check stuff on our recruits. We talk to their coaches, we talk to the opponent, coaches they play against, players they play against. Any connection we have, we look at all their social media. We do a lot of digging, and it's really easy in the heat of recruiting to just skip past all that because you really like them and you think you can get them, and we haven't done that. We've just stayed the course. So I think when Brian always asks me questions, these massive reflection questions, and I always laugh because I'll do that in August for like a week, but I think at the end of the season, when you finish your 56th game, which is really a grind. I mean, that's a really long 14-week season. I do think there is a moment of feeling like you've wrapped the regular season, you're on to something new. And my thought in that time was like, this is why we set out that plan 3 years ago, so that we could be in a position to grow the program to a spot where we're competing for championships. And that was literally how we talked about it. Like in order to be a championship type program, this is how we're going to have to go about it. And, you think of Brandon, Tyler, John, Ryan, like those guys were all in the room that night. And and the foot has been on the gas ever since, and I could not be more proud of those guys.
Yeah, and I know it was something that came up during your interview process as well, and I don't get the sense that it has changed. But with the success and with the things like that, does that plan change at all? Does it grow or expand in any ways? And what's the next step?
Yeah, well, I think the next step is sustainability, and that, you know, the further you go up the mountain, the smaller the path gets, and then eventually you're cutting the trail, and uh, and eventually the expectation becomes the top of the mountain. So we got a long way to go, and I think sustaining it, things do change when you need to sustain it, because it's always about recruiting and development. Like, those will always be the staples. You have to recruit good players, you have to develop them, but then culturally they have to fit into our program, but then our program has to fit inside of Kansas athletics and all the nuance that comes with that. And so it has to change. I mean, Sean and I have, Travis and I have joked about this and kind of laughed of, when I was hired, NIL was a thing, but it was a thing that student athletes did. They went to like Hawaiian Bros and got a deal where they got a meal once a week for a tweet. It was not what it turned into. And rev share was like a Wall Street term. And there were all kinds of things that, the scholarship limits, and none of these things existed. And so we've had to evolve inside of our plan, and we'll have to continue to. I mean, I don't know what college athletics are going to look like in a year, but they're certainly going to look different than they do right now, and in 5 years and 10 years. And so, yeah, we're going to have to maneuver, but we can never maneuver off of get the right players, develop them the right way, and make sure they're a part of a team that cares way more about team than themselves. That will always remain the same.
What did you think about the announcement today that the Big 12 tournament will be in Arizona next
We looked up the weather right away. It's like 103 right now in Arizona, and it's pretty nice inside of Globe Life. I think it's I think it's good. I need to probably spend more time thinking about things like that, Henry. But I think the big one for me is uh, which place affords us the opportunity to put forth the best tournament. So I do think we will have conversation in the future about format, because I do think the format, and tried to champion this pretty hard this fall, and I think it's important, because if you play a pod tournament, you're guaranteed 2 games. If you're at the top, you play 2 teams below you, minimal RPI impact given the fact that you're at the top. If you're in the middle, you play someone below you and someone above you, so you got a chance to move. And if you're at the bottom, you play 2 teams above you, so you have to climb, and you got to climb out of a hole. And if doing things in the best interest of the Big 12 is getting the most teams into the tournament, then the pod format is probably most advantageous. So I think if we can, wherever we can go to kind of try to do that format, I think it's important. And I do, we do have a West Coast presence now, although I've never really understood how Arizona's West Coast. They're not on a coast, but Arizona, Utah, we've got a bunch of teams that swing that direction. So I think it's good. It's a great park. It's a super cool park, and yeah, I think it'll be great.
Fitz, I know you're not done yet, but to this point, who's the most unsung hero on this team, and why? I mean, you got a bunch of big names and big stats, but is there someone that fits that description?
Yeah, we got a bunch of those guys. It's a interesting question, Matt, because they're not unsung on our team. They probably are on the outside looking in, but like Mike Kazuski is one of the greatest human beings I will ever coach, period. And he has had, in his 3 years with us, this is the least amount of at bats, the least amount of starts, and his impact, his attitude, his presence, his leadership, his all that stuff, we're not nearly as good as we are without him. And then to back it up, every time he's gone on the field, he's performed at an extremely high level. So I think you'd have to point to Mike. I think Chase Diggins has been, I think anytime guys face adversity and handle it really well, it becomes an incredible story and an incredible example. Diggy started a ton, didn't perform at the highest level, and he knew that, and all of a sudden found himself on the bench and jumped in and started catching a ton and did a great job behind the plate. Has come in and played defense at the end of every game. The ball finds Mike and Diggy at the end of every game. It's unbelievable. TJ Williams, one of my favorite players I've ever coached. I don't know how many at-bats he has, but he probably deserves 100 more. Unbelievable attitude, unbelievable worker, team first guy. And so, yeah, we've got a bunch of those guys that, have just their energy, their attitude, their effort, all that stuff. El Marco was in the dugout the other day when Flory chucked up his first pitch. And I told El Marco, I said, hey, man, I don't know anything about basketball, but if being a great teammate in adversity ever gets rewarded, you're going to have an unbelievable year because you were an unbelievable teammate all year. And I just believe in that wholeheartedly. And we've got a bunch of guys who have done that. And yeah, so they're not unsung on our team, but those would be some of the guys that you guys probably don't see as much, but they're just as important as Brady hitting leadoff and playing first.
Coach, looking ahead to the tournament, what kind of advantage does it play for you guys having seen both Baylor and Oklahoma State?
I think the advantage is that, I mean, they've seen us too, so I don't think there's much of an advantage there. I think the fact that they have to play before us is the advantage. You always hope they play a 18 to 17, 16 inning game where they have to use their entire bullpen. But yeah, I think the advantage at this point, I really do think at this point of the year, it's 98% about what we do and about 2% who we're playing against. We know what we're trying to execute and how we're trying to do it. And, every coach in this league is good and they know us, we know them. The nuance of the tournament is if we run into Houston or, Texas Tech or, someone that we haven't played, I think that's where it changes a little bit.
Hey, Coach, Rob Collins, Fox 4 in Kansas City. You talked about the resolve you guys have had over the last couple of months playing in games and series. How does that translate into a single elimination games where maybe if you get down in an inning, that these guys believe in each other and know that they can come back when it's really pressure with single elimination?
Yeah. Yeah, we've got something crazy like 25 come from behind wins, which that includes like if someone scores in the first and we're down 1-0 and then we win. So I think it's a little bit of an inflated stat. And it's a great stat. It's also not a great stat because, certainly don't want to be behind that much. But I think the vast majority of those are early on and whatnot. I think our guys have an unbelievable ability to know that it's a 9-inning game and that you just keep hitting the rock and at some point it breaks. And I could point to 100, K-State on Friday night against Frost. He stuffed us for 7 innings and literally our dugout was like, gosh, will this guy just get out of the game so we can win it? And then he gets out and boom, 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 how he hits a home run and we win. So we've had a bunch of those. Even if you look at last weekend, able to score really late, throw up a single one in the 8th and a single one in the 9th on Thursday, and then scored a bunch on Saturday to stretch it. So I do think that just the style that we play and the way our guys are just understand it's team at bats for 9 innings. And at some point, if you do that, we're bound to have a big one. I do think that is helpful versus, we don't just I think it's interesting how many games we've scored a bunch of runs when Ballinger or Hauge or Council or someone hasn't had an amazing game. So the bottom of our order has carried us a ton too. So I think we are our style is lines up pretty good for this.
Coach, how much confidence do you have in your pitching staff right now, specifically after what the starters were able to give you against West Virginia?
Yeah, a ton of confidence. I've always have a ton of confidence in our preparation. Dom and Cooper have been, they've been amazing. Cannon was outstanding on Saturday, and Breck has been great. Obviously, Manning West. I think that was one of the keys to our season is moving Manning to the bullpen because he's logged so many important innings there. We've got we actually went live pitcher hitter today for a good chunk of practice because we used 5 pitchers last weekend, which is a great problem to have, but some of those guys need work. So I've got a ton of confidence in those guys. I feel like 56 games in, we have a pretty good feel for how to match up and who's good against who. But there are a bunch of guys that we had Saturday lined up with. There was a spot in there for VTOC. There was a spot in there for Lynn, Casey Crawford. There was a spot for him there. Stites threw again today and looked really good. His velocity is bouncing back, and he's been great. So, yeah, I feel really confident about those guys. I think Coach Scott has done a really good job of getting those guys slotted and getting them to believing in what they're doing.
Do you expect Pat to be available in the Big 12 tournament and a regional?
Yes.
Okay.
Fitz, are there any scenarios you envision in which you have to choose between coaching to win a Big 12 tournament and getting ready for the regional?
We probably the same similar decision with like Breckheimer on Sunday. I just went after Saturday, or I keep saying Sunday. Going into Saturday, going into game 3 of against West Virginia, Coach Scott and I just said Breckheimer's not pitching. Because Breck would have told us on Saturday that he was good to go. He tells us he's good to go every day. So I think though some of those decisions you probably have to think about. But I don't, because of the format and the max number of games we can play is 3. I think it's very, very similar to playing a weekend series with another weekend series the weekend after.
Anything else for Coach? Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, guys.